Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fourth ever episode of the Illuminati podcast. I'm going to start today by talking about some good news. Ohio State wide receiver commit and linebacker commit Quaden Guilford and Sincere Johnson, respectively, have earned the fifth star by rivals. And if you ask me, it's about time. I've been high on both these guys for a very long time, and I love Jaquay Aiden for his ability to play inside and outside. I think he's got underrated speed. He's one of those guys that are like good at everything. Doesn't have like one specific trait that you can point to and go wow, but he's good at everything, and he really showed out at the Under Armour All American game, and I think he really proved his worth. And I love that the other recruiting sites are recognizing his talent. And Sincere, I don't think needs any introduction. He's an absolute animal on defense. He reminds me so much of Arvell Weason, not just because he idolizes him and wears the same number and comes from the same school. He's got that same mentality and physicality, and I think he's even more polished at an earlier age than um, Arvell was. I love both these guys, and I love how they're getting their shine, and they've earned that fifth star, in my opinion. What are your thoughts, Podfather?
So Jakarian, if I'm not mistaken, really showed out in the Navy All-Star game down there in San Antonio a couple weeks ago,
Yep,
where that
he
whole
did.
week of practice he was hands down the best receiver there. I think that had a lot to do with him getting that fifth star, and and thankfully seeing that him coupled with Chris Henry Jr. in this recruiting class kind of softens the blow as a Buckeye fan in losing, Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham to Notre Dame, knowing those two guys are coming in and they're both as good as advertised or better. So that helps soften the blow a little bit for me.
And the thing is, it's been like a slow rise for him because he started out as a three-star that we all offered, and everyone kind of gave a side eye at it, I think. But he's just slowly gotten better and really improved on things that uh, people were knocking him for his speed and things. His speed has really improved. He's shown his ability to take on elite defensive backs and stuff in the All American game. Like, he's just a guy that's really good at everything, and I love how you see a, a good example of a prospect that starts out low ranked and just grows and improves and puts in the time to get better at his position, and it's reflected in his new ranking, and I just love it. I've been high on him for a really long time, and I'm so glad that he's getting the recognition he deserves because he's put in a lot of work and it has showed, especially in the All American game where guys like uh, KWD, King, uh, King Dixon Wyatt, and uh, Chris Henry Jr. were basically the headliners. He was the one that showed out most for us, and I think that's great. But I wanted to touch on my main topic for today was what's going on with Davo and what's going on with Coach Prime at Colorado. We got some interesting things going on. We got coaches calling out other programs for tampering while the students are enrolled on campus, which is crazy, and are actively taking classes. And not a big Dabo fan. I say it all the time. I don't like Dabo. I think he's a dinosaur, but in this instance, I fully support what he did, calling out programs. If the NCAA isn't going to do anything, it's time for coaches to start taking things into their own hands and calling these programs out for doing underhanded things like this. And I know that uh, Pete Golden is newer to the coach, but that's coaching, but head coaching anyway. But that's no excuse for what he did. That was despicable, in my opinion. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so this is an interesting topic and one that I've been doing a ton of research with, and as I've been covering over on the College Huddle. And the thing that is interesting to me is Dabo, who I think you rightly labeled as a dinosaur, Mika.
Yep.
He came to the realization that he's going to have to use the transfer portal kicking and screaming. He did
Yeah.
not want to do it. Then, he makes the offhanded comment years ago, if we end up having to pay players, I'll leave the sport. And now he's using NIL to pay his players. So kind of, hypocritical on his part, but I think obviously hindsight being 2020, he probably wished he wouldn't have ever said those comments. So
Yeah.
Dabo's always late to the party, because I think he, in his mind, is still back in 2015, 2016, 2017,
He
2018
still
college
got that.
football.
He still got that. You play for the university, the old school. Uh, university above all mentality, and you can see it. And like you said, he's came into this new NIL era kicking and screaming, and it really shows. But I support his mentality here. I thought what went on was ridiculous.
I agree with you on that. And here's the other thing that's very interesting about this is Dabo Swinney is kind of the elder statesman of the college football coaches.
Yep.
He rose to preeminence before Kirby Smart. So he's kind of the bridge between the old school guys, who I will label as Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, and the new school guys, which are like Ryan Day, Kurt Signetti, um, Kirby Smart. Those guys,
Yep.
and he bridges both of them. I think the newer guys, Mika, and I'd love to get your opinion on this. I think they're scared to call things out like this because they don't want to put themselves in bad place recruiting wise, or in jeopardy of being looked at by the NCAA. I don't think Dabo Swinney cares.
Yeah.
And because of that, he's able to get behind a podium and publicly say things that I think a lot of people think and believe. He just happens to have what we call the bully pulpit, or the ability to take a stand and say things that other people feel that they don't have the ability to say. That's my opinion on Dabo.
Yeah, and I agree with that opinion. I think Davos, to the point, he's like an old man. He's like, I've done this long enough. I'm been successful enough that I just don't care. I'll say what I want. He's like, your grandpa. Your grandpa s- will say things that, you know, I won't ever say because I don't feel like I have the life experience to say that. Davo's got enough coaching experience that he says if there's blowback, I don't really care. I'll deal with it or I'll walk away. Like
Right.
and I fully support what he did, and I think Ryan Day is eventually going to get to that point, and it all comes down to how you manage your program. If you have faith that your program is doing things the right way, I don't see a problem in calling stuff out because even if there's blowback, it can't really hurt you. But I understand these younger coaches being leery of it because you can't monitor everything, and there always could be something that you don't know about, or maybe something you do know about, but it ends up being worse than what you think it is, and you getting that blowback. So I understand the reticence of it, but I do agree that things like this need to be called out. And I love how it's basically if the NCAA isn't going to do anything, we're going to try people in the court of public opinion.
Mm.
If
Okay, so do you think that's the kind of MO here from Dabo is I'm going to call the NCAA out, hoping they do something, but if not, they might get some pushback from the public because of what I said. Do you think that's
I,
kind of his action here?
I 1000% think that's what's going on here. I think he's trying to force their hand, but even if they don't do anything, he's trying to embarrass um, not only the NCAA but programs that are doing this and saying, "Here, you being underhanded, you can't get players the right way, so you gotta, poach players while they're actively taking classes and enrolled and working out with programs because you can't do it the right way." I think it was twofold: embarrassing the NCAA, calling them out, and calling out underhanded programs for doing things crookedly and doing it the wrong way, in my opinion.
Can I ask you another question?
Sure.
So, in my response to this story when doing a video for the Ole Miss people, I gave them two options. I said, A, you ignore it, you deflect, and you don't participate in the NCAA's investigation, a la Michigan. Or B, you double down on it by saying, here's what LSU's done to us. Look at all the tampering they've done to our players. So if you're going to come at us, you have to come at them. In other words, if you're going to take us down, we're taking LSU with us because of their hate for Lane Kiffin. I presented that to the Ole Miss people, and I got very interesting responses from them. It's kind of mixed between the two, where some people are saying, well, we didn't do nothing, or we're not doing anything that anybody else isn't doing, which might be true. And when we covered this over at the OHIO podcast the other day, and we asked everybody, do you think Ohio State has tampered at some point? It was over 50% of our fans said, yeah, we probably have.
So, um, is your question, do I think we're tampering, or
No,
what?
so my question is, at this point, do you think since tampering is basically so widespread here, what like do you think Ole Miss is just going to get away with it? Because it's like, how are you gonna come down on us when there's literally everybody is practically doing it in
From
in
a,
one way or another.
from a story standpoint, I think if I were them, I would double down just because it would just create more attention on it. And I think the more attention that gets put on this, eventually, like, the NCAA will have to step in, or we have to come up with another governing body for college football if
Yeah.
they're not going to step in, because this is just getting ridiculous.
So the tinfoil hat aspect of this story is that the NCAA doesn't really care, and all they're going to do is collect fine money from it
And
because that's all they care about, a la Michigan, right? So,
that's
like, in a weird way, the NCAA kind of wants this to happen because
yeah,
they're going to get more money from it.
yeah. But it also is kind of like a black eye, but it's a black eye that they don't really care about. They're just gonna put makeup on it and go on. Like, eventually, eventually, I think what's gonna need to happen is college football is gonna have uh, and to a lesser extent, basketball is going to have to break away from the NCAA and come up with their own governing body, because if the NCAA isn't going to do anything, it's going to be more on the coaches and individual programs to call this stuff out and make sure that we make it unpalatable for, in a in a lack of a better for a lack of a better term, embarrass the programs that are doing this,
Yeah.
especially to the extent that Ole Miss and LSU are doing this. I think all programs are doing this. I think we can all agree that this is going on everywhere, but some programs are taking it to a completely absurd level. And that's the thing that I think needs to be called out.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. In on that regard, Mika. I wish the NCAA actually had more. I wish the NCAA was more intelligent than what they are.
Yeah.
They are pretty much a worthless organization. They're a teethless organization, and they like to talk a big game, but they're just all talk. Um, their inconsistencies are their downfall. In all reality, their inconsistencies have been their downfall. Their inability to control, their inability to um, work with these institutions and these conferences to better the sports. Um, and in all practicality, a lot of these things were the foresight of some of this stuff was all the way back in the 1980s. We're talking 40 years ago when the NCAA saw this stuff coming down, and they kept just kicking the can down the road on everything. And now they're kind of just sitting in a pile of their own poo because they refused to do anything about any of this stuff. And so now I feel like they're just kind of sitting back going, well, you all don't want us here, so you all handle it, and we'll just collect the paycheck because that's all that really matters at the end.
Yeah,
So,
and I mentioned it on my last few episodes. They're like Roman Emperor Nero. They're just sitting back playing the instrument while the city burns. They're just collecting their check and moving on. Like, it's basically what they're doing, and it's going. Like I said, it's going to get to the point where we're going to have to break off and create our own like governing body and appoint a commissioner and all that stuff, because it's only going to get worse the longer this goes and there being no punishments for it. I mean, you're already seeing ridiculous amounts from pro tampering going on from programs like LSU and Lane Kiffin actively pursuing players that already signed contracts in with other programs, and Miami and programs like that doing it, and it's just going to get crazier and more widespread if nothing gets done. And
hmm
I fully expect us to eventually break away from the NCAA, because I don't think the NCAA is going to do anything, because frankly, I don't think they care at this point. They just want their money, and they're perfectly happy sitting by and watching the sports tear themselves apart. And it's kind of sad from a fan base standpoint, because we're passionate about it and we love it, so we don't understand why they're doing this but from like a money standpoint and a business standpoint, I understand why they're not really doing anything, because there's if they do something, you're just gonna open up um opportunities for lawsuits and stuff, and it's just
hmm
gonna get even more messy. So it's a mess, and it really needs to be dealt with. But I think the only way to deal with it is, like I said, doing what Dabo did, and to piggyback on to another topic that I wanted to touch on, what Deon Sanders is doing, instituting NIL fines for team violations and bad behavior and stuff. The only way to get these players to respond at this point, I think now, is attacking their pocketbooks. And that's the sad state of how things have changed in college football. But I think it's true. Like, and I'm not talking about it from a legal standpoint. Like, he might not be legally allow, fine to be allowed to do this, but at a certain point, what else can you do? If players are just gonna come for the money, what else can you attack at this point? If you're gonna make your point and enforce team rules and stuff. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I've got some pretty strong opinions on this one that I think a lot of people will be surprised that I am taking the side of this argument that I am. I'm against it. Um, I'm against it for several reasons. Number one, um, I don't think that placing fines on um, your players, financial fines on your players, and if you look at those fines, they are not insignificant.
Yeah,
Anything from $400 to $2,500 per incident. Um,
2,500 and up,
yeah,
depending on whether it's a repeat violator or not.
you are in a situation. Let's say you're a player and you received $100,000 in NIL. That's not an insignificant amount, $100,000. You aren't $1 million plus player, but you received $100,000. Okay, which apparently might be on the low end for Colorado or something. I don't know. Um, you come from a financially challenged background, and you give 80,000 of that to your mom and dad or whoever so that they can get out of whatever apartment that they're in and get a nice house somewhere, a good down payment for a nice home, and you move them closer to Boulder, Colorado, right?
Yep.
Um, you're now left with $20,000 of that, 20% of it. And you have a bad day and you miss a team meeting or something. You're going to be expected to pay a large chunk of what you have left off of that? Like, no way. And and again, I'm gonna compare this to people like to a lot of people like to say this is what they need to do, but then they don't want to apply that to themselves. You have a job, you're late to your job because of the weather or whatever. You're late to your job by 5 minutes. You walk in 5 minutes late. Are you going to accept your employer fining you? I know I wouldn't.
Well, that's true, but um, to argue my point though, the the bigger fines were for, like, completely missing practice and completely missing team meetings. And I'm sure a player could go in and say, "Hey, I was I had a family situation to deal with, or I had health issues to deal with," and things can be waived. But for repeat offenders, I can understand uh, Coach Prime and other programs, if they decide to do this, instituting this policy for bad
Okay,
behavior.
okay. I see your point. Now let me push back slightly again.
Okay?
Okay, fine. You're a repeat offender. What are you playing for?
Exactly. They can leave the team. Like, I'm just saying, if these athletes want to play for these programs, if this gets instituted with for other programs as well, which I think if this is successful, it will be adopted by other programs and things, that these players will have to conform to these to
Yeah,
this.
I'm not arguing the fact that these players need to have responsibility and they need to be at team meetings and they need to be at practices. Like I get that. Like that's a part of your life. That's a part of your responsibility as an adult to do those things.
Yeah,
If you're given a scholarship to play at the University of Colorado, you're expected to go to class, you're expected to be at practice, you're expected to take part in film studies, you're expected to go to weightlifting. Like I get all of that. I'm not arguing that point. My whole point to this is if you are going to adopt, and a lot of people who are praising this are basically saying we're adopting an NFL model, that this is what NFL teams do, etc. And I get that. But what NFL does is they take away game checks from players.
yeah,
These are not game checks. This is not NIL is not money earned through you getting a contract with the university for your abilities to play as an employee. In other words, if I'm really good and I get to the NFL and I get a 3-year contract to play for the Cincinnati Bengals, okay? That becomes my employer. These kids are not employed by the university.
could have picked
This
a better could have picked a better organization for yourself there.
well, I mean, I wanted to pick something that you and I both can relate to. I have a
Yeah,
better chance of playing for the Cincinnati Bengals than I do the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Baltimore Ravens to
I
take
have
a AFC North team.
I have a better chance of playing for the Cincinnati Bengals than
But do you understand where I'm coming from with
yes,
this?
I understand your point, but
Okay.
to again, what else? What else can you do at this
Oh,
point?
you bench their butts. That's the old school way.
I know, yeah, but you've touched on it. If you bench them, they're just gonna go somewhere else anyway.
Well, they're probably
So,
going to go somewhere else when you find them. So what's the point?
so my point is, make it more difficult for them, and maybe they'll correct their bad behavior.
Mhm. I think it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. If this is the type of player that he is recruiting to his organization, and that's the kind of culture that they have, then that's on him for bringing in bad apples. That's you know,
Yeah,
and you trying to all of a sudden throw a fine. Hey, I'm going to start fining everybody about this. To me, it's very disingenuous to come from a multimillionaire who's a head coach who say I'm going to start fining kids who aren't multimillionaires. Not all of them, maybe a handful of them now, but you know what I
I
mean. I just find it disingenuous.
I see your point, but I also see the point of him doing this because there's really no other way that you can attack him that's going to hurt them like finding them will.
Where do you think the money goes?
I would hope it goes back into the program, but I have my doubts that's where it goes. Probably goes to I don't know, chain around his neck or something, I don't know.
That to me would be the question I would ask as a
It's
reporter.
it's
Uh,
Illuminati, so tinfoil hat theories are welcome. That's my tinfoil
it
hat
goes,
theory.
it's all being collected for the next big NIL check for the player he wants that he's
Yep,
going to pull out of. And I've heard a lot of people, not I should say a lot. I've heard some people say, would he have implemented this when his son was there? I think he would have. I
yeah,
do. I don't think Dion. I mean, a lot of people think that he showed his son favoritism, and Travis Hunter favoritism because they were the 5 stars. They were the big time recruits that were on that team compared to a lot of
Shador
their
was
teammates.
not a Shador was not a 5 star.
Well, he was the big
Yeah,
name, right? So
he was a big name because of Dion. Not that Shador wasn't talented,
Hey
but
man, Shador's an all pro, right? Isn't he a pro
yeah,
bowler now?
yeah, but I have my own thoughts about that.
As rightfully so. Rightfully so.
Yeah, but yeah, I think this is just part of the new landscape of college football. You're going to see different ideas being thrown around on how to discipline programs and players for breaking the rules. And it just goes to show the lack of involvement by the NCAA. These coaches are having to implement things like the code of public opinion and stuff to make it difficult for these things to be go, going on and shining light on all the rule breaking and stuff that's happening. And I think we're going to see more programs implement things like this if things continue to get worse, which I think they will, and if the NCAA continues to turn a blind eye. Like I said, I think the end result in all this is going to be college football and basketball instituting their own governing body and um, coming up with different ways to control what's going on behind the scenes, appointing a commissioner and stuff like that, being more like an NFL type system, I guess.
Yeah, I'll say this about that. If you thought Dabo Swinney was basically being dragged to where he's at, kicking and screaming, just imagine how the NCAA is gonna act with that.
Yeah, I
We're
mean,
we're a long, long way from that happening because they're gonna fight tooth and nail.
yeah, and that's my point. If they don't want this to happen, they better start doing things. It because it's going to happen if they don't. Because there's going to be no other choice. This is getting ridiculous. There's things going on behind the scenes that we don't even know about. I'm sure that are just ridiculous, and like the thing that went on with the Duke quarterback. There's
Hmm.
no way he's the only one this has happened to. I
No,
mean, the Washington QB and now the Duke quarterback, like, just because these are the stories we hear about doesn't mean it's the only ones that are happening.
true.
So that's my point. If the NCAA doesn't want us to move to our own governing body, they're gonna have to grow some teeth. I'll go with teeth to be nice and start instituting some rules.
You're right. You're right, Mika, and that really is the bottom line to this entire story. That to combine the last two, between Dabo and Dion, is the fact that the NCAA, they need to start stepping up and they need to be the adults in the room. But for the longest time, they've been anything but, and that's the problem.
And that's the sad part for fans of these programs. And that's the that's the people that really get hurt in all this, I think, is the fans because we don't we don't really care. We just want to see our team do well. We want to see good games. We want to see the sport that we love do well and flourish. And when all this stuff is going on, I think that's who gets hurt the most is the fans. Like, it tarnishes the image of the sport we love, and I hate that because it's a wonderful sport, and these players do deserve to get paid. But the behind the scenes stuff is just grody and nasty, and I don't like it.
I don't either. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, maybe I'm just getting old and my age is showing, but um, I'm full get off my lawn mode.
Not a problem. I've been there for a couple years, my wife says.
I don't know. Maybe I'm getting gray hairs. I don't know. I haven't checked in the mirror lately.
They're all on my face is the problem, so I can't hide them.
That's okay. It's distinguished.
Yeah, okay. Sure, I'll take your word for it.
Go with go with distinguished. You're not old. You're just experienced.
Yeah, I was just
Oh,
showing wisdom in these latter years of my life.
that's what my grandpa always used to say all the time. He wasn't old. He was just experienced.
Yeah, there you go.
So I'm gonna go with grandpa on this.
I think that's a good idea.
But anyway, that's my show for today, guys. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, share this. I'm gonna start sharing my episodes on Facebook and stuff so more people can find this. I already share every episode on Twitter, so if you have a hard time finding me or can't find this episode for any reason, it'll be up on my social media pages. Share it around. Leave a comment what you want to see next. If there's a topic you want me to cover or prospect film you want my opinion on or things you want me to break down, please leave it in the comments. I want this to be as fan friendly as possible, and I want you guys to get whatever out of the show that you want to get out of it. I enjoy talking with people in the comments and getting feedback. Gotta get those subscriber numbers up. Check us out on Patreon. Me and Buck Vader have been doing a lot of uh, recruiting evals, and we're constantly updating our recruiting database. We even got evaluations for prospects at the big 247 and rivals, and all those guys haven't even ranked yet. So we got our eyes on even relatively unknown prospects. So please go check that out. We put a lot of work into that. I know me and Vader and you all do a good job keeping it updated and keeping it together. Please check us out and give us feedback on there. Vader's killing it with articles. We're getting ready to publish one on the Deion Sanders situation, so keep an eye out for that one. And we continue to work on blogs and different stories as well as recruiting videos. Please check out our Patreon and stuff. It's only $5 a month. It's great content. You can join the asylum every night after the live shows. That's always a good time. I need to get back on there. Those are fun. We try
Those
to
are
make
those are wild.
we try to make our podcasting experience as fun for the fan base as possible, and I want to continue that legacy with my own show. So please let me know what you want to see, like I said, and have a good day. Check out our merchandise, and if you want to support my channel and all the other channels, pick up Illuminutty hoodies and shirts and merchandise. Hopefully, we can get some coffee mugs and stuff like that going in future, and keep the catalog of merchandise coming for you guys. And like I said, I enjoy interacting with you guys, so please share and leave a comment and leave some feedback. And as always, OH,
IO.
go Bucks, and Scum still sucks.